Welcome to Heaping Spoonful, a twice-monthly conversation with restaurateurs, chefs, growers, and others who have helped generate the legends associated with eateries across the Mid-South. The team at Benny Keith is proud to sponsor this adventure with the goal of preserving the stories that have helped cultivate an amazing food scene across the Mid-South. So kick back and enjoy a Heaping Spoonful.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Heaping Spoonful. I'm Kelly Bass, your host, and our goal with this podcast is to share the stories of the Mid-South's top chefs and restaurateurs with our listeners. Covering the restaurant scene is something I've done for almost 40 years. Most of that time was spent writing restaurant reviews for Little Rock newspapers and magazines, long before the internet was a thing, long before anybody who got on Yelp or TripAdvisor became a bona fide restaurant reviewer. But of course, everything has changed. And now, thanks to the folks at Benny Keith Foods, I'm a podcaster. And let me tell you, I like talking about restaurants and the people who make them great a lot more than I liked writing about them. Today, I am happy to welcome Dan Kovach, the owner-operator of Copper Grill and Capers, two longtime staples on the Little Rock, Arkansas dining scene. So we are glad to have you with us here on Heaping Spoonful, Dan.
Glad to be here.
Cool. Well, we're going to get to the backstory of everything, your restaurants, your everything. But I'll just start just like this. If we were having this conversation 10 years ago, so 2013, and I had said, do you foresee yourself owning Copper Grill and Capers someday? What would you have said?
No, not at that time.
Yeah, it wasn't in your master plan. And if I'd said also 10 years ago, before then, which would have been 2013, we're recording this in early February of 2023, just to let people know. If I'd said before the end of the 20-teens, Cajun's Wharf is going to be closed forever, what would you have said to that?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, because it was a force to be reckoned with. Now, I am sure we have totally lost our Heaping Spoonful listeners who aren't from Arkansas. So let me provide some context, and then we're going to dive in deeper. So Cajun's Wharf was arguably the largest, most popular restaurant in Little Rock history. I mean, it was the place to go for particularly people who came into town. How many taxi cabs have brought them from the airport to Cajun's Wharf? But it opened in 1975 on the Arkansas River. And despite a few ups and downs, it was a force for all 44 years it was in business before closing in mid-2019. Mary Beth Ringgold, who actually was guest number 2 on Heaping Spoonful, and Dan is guest number 80 on Heaping Spoonful. She'd been a manager there in years past, and then it was bought by the Landry's chain, and then they came back in, and she led a group of folks who bought Cajun's in 1999, and of course shepherded it for its last 20 years, but that was not her first foray into restaurant ownership. In 1997, she'd opened Capers in West Little Rock in an area, and she has lamented this, that wasn't a lot of competition. It wasn't that developed then, and now it's a real hotbed of restaurants, bars, and other commercial activities. And then in 2007, along came Copper Grill, which is on the ground floor of the 303rd condo tower in downtown Little Rock. So you got Cajun's, you got Capers, you got Copper Grill. And when I first met Dan, I knew him as the general manager of Cajun's Wharf. Was that your first connection point with Mary Beth?
I actually started as a server at Cajun's in the first week of January 2000 is when I started with the company.
Okay, wow. So you had a long period of time. And then you went from server to getting in a management position?
Yeah, within about 8 months to a year, I was got into kind of assistant management, and then a few months after that, I became the dining room manager.
Okay. And so Cajun's, again, it was a huge operation. I think it was about 20,000 square feet. So what was the seating capacity for Cajun's?
In total with the restaurant, the bar, our private dining, we were, in the 1,200 neighborhood.
That's crazy. Does that include the deck?
No.
Not even include the deck?
No, the deck, yeah, that'd be another few hundred.
Yeah, because that was the place to, again, see and be seen. Thursday nights, this big swinging deck parties, live music, and tons of fun. So in 2000, you began working as a server at Cajun's. What had you done before that?
I had been in the hospitality industry pretty much my whole life. One of my first jobs on paper was working in a coffee shop. But before that, in high school, had a friend whose parents owned a little. I'm originally from Connecticut, and they had a cool little Italian restaurant. And they would let me and a couple of our friends kind of bus tables, bar back.
Right, whatever needed
17
doing, right?
years old. But anyway, so I've just kind of been immersed in the business since I was a teenager.
When did you come to Arkansas?
I kind of came back and forth early on, but I moved back officially full time around 2000. But I came down here to go to school. Went to school in Monticello for a year, and then I kind of moved back home, paid off first year of school, did some traveling, backpacked around the world, and came back to Little Rock to finish school at Euler.
Right.
And then I got a job at Cajun's.
Which was a great place to get a job, and you never knew what it would go for. Well, just before we get into the current, let's continue to look back. Cajun's was renowned for many things, and I'm of an age where, I remember they had a thing called Beat the Clock Happy Hour, which was from 4 to 5, drinks were 60 cents. Then they went to 70, then 80 cents. I'm old. This was in the early 80s.
A little bit before my time.
Oh, this is almost 2 decades before your time. But it was the packed place. And of course, people there weren't oysters on the half shell many places. And they had oysters Beanville. And they had these crazy big reddish, orangish, pinkish drinks called Play-Dohs. And I drank one, I think the last day I came to Cajun's wasn't long before it closed. So just talk about some of the things that and you can include those if you want, some of the things that Cajun's was legendary for.
Man, it was legendary for so many things. And I started at an interesting time there. Clinton was in his last days in office, and the country and the economy was in just brilliant shape. I mean, the country was in the black. We're out of a deficit. And
right.
At the time, we had about 3 other liquor distributors, about 3 or 4 other food distributors. Monday at Cajun's Wharf was no different than a Saturday night when I first started there. I mean, we'd be on an hour-and-a-half wait on a Monday, Tuesday. People were spending money like it was coming off of a printer. Wine, our wine selection.
Sure.
We've always had killer wine selection. On a Monday, it'd be nothing to walk out of there, making $250, $300.
And that was a lot more money then than it is now.
Absolutely, yeah. That was, over 20 years ago. But yeah, Cajun's was something for everybody, literally, whether it was, as you said, a business person coming into town, taking a cab from the airport to us, or taking our shuttle. We used to have that shuttle that we pick people up at the airport or at the hotels. Just a unique place, right there on the banks of the Arkansas River, the beautiful eastern views of the downtown skyline, our little cute mini skyline, and then those amazing views of the sunsets on the bluffs at Emerald Park in North Little Rock. I mean, just an amazing place, amazing, times, just a little something for everybody.
Yeah, it was, again, and I think as we look back on it, it's easy to think of it even greater than it was, but it was super great. So you'd been there for years, and here you are moving in on 20 years, and time's popping along, and the building's getting older, and the crowds are great on the weekends, but, it's hard to, when you got 1,200 seats on a Monday, and things had changed. So while you didn't have an equity stake, you were right there with Mary Beth and the other partners. Did it become clear quickly or over time that Cajun's just wasn't going to be able to survive?
Kelly, it's interesting. It wasn't. Because we overall, as you said, you have your Mondays like most restaurants do, but really overall, the business did very well. It was just the fact that, the building was starting to age. The infrastructure was fine. That's something we always kept up with and always, made changes. Mary Beth always did a good job of keeping up with updating and, whether it was bathrooms or whatnot. I mean, we always were doing some kind of upgrades, but it really was just the fact we were coming up on a third 10-year lease. And like most landlords, you get into a situation where you just see dollar signs and you want more money. And it just financially didn't make sense for Mary Beth to go for another 10 years and at the price that he was wanting in the structure of it. So, and I wasn't even privy to a lot of that until I jokingly tell people the story, kind of your question to me earlier about would I have imagined Cajun's closing? And no, I didn't. And I was coming up on my early 40s. I was just about to turn 40 around that time. And I kept on thinking to myself, what is my, I've hit that glass ceiling, where am I at? What is my future going to be with the company? And around that time is when Mary Beth, Friday, before the Sunday we told our entire staff, is when she told me that we were going to be closing Cajuns down. And she had held that close for about 6 months, as she knew. And I knew she was in negotiations, but I didn't know things had kind of banked left, and she had to make a decision to, close the place down. So I only had a day or so to process the fact that we were going to be closing Cajuns before we told our entire staff. And then funny enough, timeline-wise, you probably don't even remember this, but it was officially announced, not by plan, but on April 1st.
Oh, I didn't remember that. Funny joke.
And so it was madness, because the phone started ringing and the emails were coming in, and my personal phone was blowing up. Everybody thought it was a April Fool's joke. And literally, and this is testament to the crew of people, the owners and, management, literally that day, I mean, the business just started rolling in when people realized it wasn't a joke. I mean, the first day we had people coming in from Northwest Arkansas, Northeast Arkansas, and then it just rolled on from there until we finally.
Yeah, I made, I'd come consistently, not that often, but I came on purpose several times between the announcement, which was April 1st, and it was 2 months. It was going to close on June 1st. But then something happened that didn't let you be open on June 1st.
Yeah, we had the epic 100-year flood.
Cajuns is right on the river.
Man, it was, and all the years, I could say I grew up there. I started there when I was roughly 21. Yeah. And, I've seen that river every spring rise once the Arkansas River gets flooded from all the snow melt in Colorado that runs down to us. I mean, I've seen it years and years come up. And I've never seen, obviously, what we all saw, but being on the banks of the river and watching it every day. So the night we actually made our last night, which was, I guess the 31st, May 31st, Mary Beth had to get with the fire marshal, and every hour on the hour had to report to him to let him know where the water was standing in our parking lot, because it was coming up. And it really was an epic night. I mean, just to close a place down that was there for so many years, and to watch a generation of people who, when I started as a young waiter and then into management, seeing families come in with a baby in a baby cradle, to walking in there on their first date. Yeah. That's how crazy, the timeline for me was.
I know. I will tell you, I brought my junior prom to Cajun's Wharf. And that would have been in the spring of 1976, so it was just barely a year or so old.
I wasn't even born yet.
Yeah, I know I'm old. Yeah, I brought my date there. Senior prom, I didn't even go. I think I went to the Travelers game instead.
Funny. Yeah, it's wild.
So after, the one thing, clearly Mary Beth made a financial decision. You run all the numbers and see what the rent's going to be and understand your receipts from business and all your other expenses, and said, this is not working. But there were 2 other restaurants. So, you were, again, as close to being an owner as you could be, because you ran the biggest operation that they had. Did they say, come on down to Copper, come on out to Capers, and you keep working with us?
Yeah, it kind of happened like that. So, Capers being, we always kind of joke, being the baby of the 3 restaurants, it was the youngest. When we originally opened it, it was in 2007, it was a chop house concept. It was kind of a downtown, we had 3 different cuts of steak. We had veal, we had lamb, copper grill, yeah. Right. And so after we closed Cajuns, there was so much going on. I mean, when you close a place down, you just don't shut it down and walk away. There was almost 2 months worth of getting 44 and a half years of stuff out of a 20,000 square foot building.
Right.
The way I described it to several people was kind of like, when you you lose a loved one or your parents, and you've got to go to their house and get everything out and
get ready for the estate sale.
Yeah, I mean, you just start digging through. I mean, we were finding menus, wine list. You know, you were talking about Beat the Clock. We found an old wine list from like 78, 79.
Look cheap.
With a bottle of Puy Fusset for, $5. You know, it's like wild. But anyway, so after we, finally got things settled and whatnot and got out of the building, Mary Beth, I was kind of asking her, what's the plan? What I need to figure out my future. What do you think? And she's like, well, we could use you down at Copper Grill. Why don't you go down there, kind of consult, kind of get in there, see what we are doing that works and see. And I've always been part of it. I mean, when we came up, or I say we, when Mary Beth, met with Jimmy and Rhett originally, and that was, the development that was going on down there at the time, we collectively, the owners and some of the managers, we all worked together to come up with the concept of Copper Grill. And so I was always involved, but not on a day-to-day basis, but in some way or another, wine training. When we opened up, that was one of my big things, was helping to put the wine list together and wine training. But anyway, so after we closed it down, that's what I did. Went down there and was basically sort of consulting, keeping a paycheck and working. And at some point, I was pressing Mary Beth a little bit about, this can't go on forever.
As a consultant.
So eventually, she was super busy. I mean, there was so much to do to dismantle that many years of a business. We finally had an afternoon happy hour, and she unveiled what her plan possibly was for me.
Okay.
And so that was, would you be interested in buying Copper Grill? And I never saw that coming. That was left field. So that was kind of how it happened.
Well, that should have, first off, flattered you.
Absolutely.
Because she'd worked with you for all those years and seen your ability to run a restaurant, even though you weren't an owner. Well, that is cool. So when the time came, which, and we'll get to this in a minute, I believe the announcement that made the press was on Halloween Day of 2019.
Yeah.
So you all had been in discussions on that since June. Well, I don't know where between June and October but it wasn't like on the 30th she said. So y'all have been working on it. And of course, then you got to crunch numbers and figure out how it's all going to work and all this stuff. Yeah, cool. Well, all right. Well, I'll tell you what, folks, we're going to take a short break here on Heaping Spoonful. We're going to be back in just a minute with Dan Kovach, who's the owner-operator of Copper Grill and Capers, two of the most popular restaurants, two of my favorite restaurants in Little Rock, Arkansas. So hang on, everybody.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Heaping Spoonful. We at Benny Keith Foods enjoy talking about the food scene almost as much as we enjoy providing the top quality ingredients that help restaurateurs and chefs across the Mid-South create their magic. Now let's dive even deeper into the culinary world with your host, Kelly Bass.
Hey, welcome back to Heaping Spoonful. Let's now continue our conversations with Dan Kovach. So it was, again, 5 months between the end of Cajuns and you becoming a co-owner of Copper Grill, because you have and still have a partner. And is that partner a hands-on partner, or is it a stay back and let you do the work partner?
Yep, stay back behind the scenes.
Great.
Trust me.
Super. That's great. That's nothing even better. And I was curious as I thought about this. So your work at Cajun's Wharf, clearly prepared you to run a restaurant, but at Cajun's, were you as up in the business as you are now? We'll get around to Capers in a minute, but I don't know what kind of say-so you had on menu and on other food choices at Cajun's, or if you really were more just on the operational side of things. So were you comfortable doing what you began to do at Copper based on what you did at Cajun's?
Yeah, especially in the last 10 years. When I first started, the partners were all very involved in different ways, and especially before we opened Copper Grill, we had the focus. There was 4 business partners and a pretty large group of management, and so the first 10 years I was always involved. I'm a food guy, always have been, always will be, right. Wine and spirits as well. But the last 10 years I definitely got a lot more involved, and and Mary Beth was always great about letting me make decisions and kind of running with it, and just always always wanted to keep competitive and keep on top of the food scene. And, she had a lot of irons in the fire. So it was something I enjoyed, and definitely wanted to see the business, stay at the level it was and achieve other things. And so the last 5 years, before we closed Cajuns, I had created a really good relationship with Fulton Fish Market in New York City. We were getting stuff flown in daily, stuff that was coming out of the water that was coming to us, not even 24 hours, 36 hours out of the water.
Crazy?
Yeah, it was wild.
So
and so we were doing some amazing stuff with them, and we still do some similar things. Not with Fulton. They've, like everybody through COVID, they have a whole different focus now on residential and not commercial and whatnot. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, definitely was hands-on all the way around. The last several years, Cajuns was open, and again, Mary Beth was always...
Yeah, Mary Beth was, again, every leader of people wants to help their people, learn more. And that's, I'm sure, watching what you did at Cajuns is why she said, I think you'd be great to be an owner of Copper. So that is totally cool. So my memory tells me that not too long, and I can't remember exactly how long, before you came on board at Copper, that there had been some fairly significant changes. I came to a soft opening. I think Mary Beth invited me, and it had a little bit of a different look, a little bit of a different furniture setup, a new menu that seemed a little more approachable, because it's very approachable. Am I right? Was that somewhere not too terribly long before you came?
Yeah, like everything, just at Cajuns and all the years that we had that, I don't know if you remember, but back in, gosh, I guess was it 2002, maybe 2003, when we did $1 million renovation on the bar at Cajuns years ago, and that was because we had to keep up with what was going on downtown in the River Market, and so we had to keep up and had to make changes. So same thing with Copper Grill. I mentioned earlier when we first opened it, the concept was really kind of an upscale, high-end chop house. Well, that becomes the destination place. Well, Sonny Williams had already made its mark downtown, and we were also... are still, young down there. When things were being developed, not as many people were living down there as they are now. So the population density is nowhere near what it is now. So we grew with that. We had done some marketing analysis and menu analysis, and just started looking at possibly dumbing down the menu. And I say that, I mean, just making it more frequent friendly is the word I'll use. Just even though you've got a pretty nice group of people that live downtown who have money, even people with money are not going to go out and spend $200 a night on eating and having a beverage. And so there were two things that we wanted to do, was to build the bar business and make the menu a more casual, repeat-friendly menu. And we expanded the bar space. We added 3 tall tables. We took out a large community table, which when we came up with that concept, this was back in 2006, 2005, when we were coming up with ideas. That was a big thing in big cities, having the communal table where just strangers could sit at a big 12-foot table. Little Rock wasn't ready for that. And so we took one of those big tables out and we put in a couple more tall bar tables. We put in TVs, and that really kind of was a game changer for Copper Grill. Even at that time, we started doing a lot better with it. But like any business, we had different groups of management that were there and tried different things, and it did a lot better. It was a neat transformation to see. But in that time frame, that's some of the changes we had made.
Yeah, well, the thing too is you're on the bottom floor of 303rd, which is a residential condo tower, and I mean, I know people that you're their restaurant. You're their. They're down the lot, having a drink at the bar, watching TV, taking some food up, eating there. So that's your nice built-in business beyond all the downtowners. Of course, we just mentioned that the announcement of your purchase of Copper Grill came on October 31st of 2019. So you got November, December, January, February, and then 4 months and less than a half later, COVID-19. I'm sure you were cursing your timing, but hindsight's 20/20. Who knew? But I was doing some internet research, just looking for stuff for us to talk about, and I found a really cool fundraising page that looked like it was successful. in which you, during your initial COVID shutdown, because like everywhere else, we weren't just running, less capacity. We were no restaurants were open for in restaurant dining. But you did a ton of good with a free meals program for first responders, and you staffed it with your Copper Grill folks. Tell us about that program, because you fed a lot of people.
We did, and I'll tell you, funny enough, that idea was a spin on an idea that a very good friend of mine from back home that I went to high school with. We've got a mutual friend who owns a pizza restaurant back home, and he did a similar program, and so everybody was just trying to be creative to get people to come buy food to go. Sure. And when COVID first hit, we were all thinking we were going to be getting that hit like the big cities, Chicago, New York. At first, we didn't, but everybody was totally backing the first responders, the hospital workers, police, fire departments, paramedics. So came up with the idea to basically raise money, and in turn, the first responders can come in and eat, and we would just apply the money towards what the folks would eat every day. So we basically just ran an open tab. Yeah. You came in and you were wearing, a uniform and a badge, you got a meal for free. And it was pretty amazing, because I've over the years with Cajuns, we had off-duty police officers there on the weekends. So over the years, I've had grown friendships with several friends that are in police force and other walks of life. And then on top of that, being the general manager of Cajuns all those years, I can't tell you how many times I've had friends tap my shoulder for donations for the baseball team, for the soccer team. Yes. And so in my Rolodex of phones, I thought, well, folks,
now it's your turn.
It's your turn.
Yeah.
And very unabashedly started texting folks, letting them know what we were doing. But I will say the first big donation was from the Little Rock Police Department, and they're, I don't know what they call it. They're not PAL, but one of those organizations.
The FOP?
I think it was the FOP.
Yeah,
so
I
So I tapped a couple of my friends and I said, hey, look, this is what we're trying to do. Would you help me out with this? And you can go back and look, I think, and they were one of the first. I think they donated like $2,000.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, if we can get this thing up to 4 or 5, that would be awesome. When it was all said and told, I think we got up somewhere around $20,000 in donations.
And what's still on that page? The last couple that came in were $250.
Yeah,
they weren't $10.
No,
I'm sure 10 was fine. You were happy.
People were rolling with it.
That's great.
But I do have to say, on a funny note, one of the funniest days in doing that. Lady comes in to get an order to go, clearly in a uniform. I wasn't paying attention, and she demanded to pay for her food. And I said, well, no, I mean, that's the whole deal is first responders, so on and so forth. She's like, no, I really just would rather pay for my food. And so we're going back and forth, and I said first responder about 3 or 4 times, and finally she said, "You're not getting it." She said, "Read my badge." And I looked, and she says, "Yeah, I'm the last responder." She was the coroner.
Oh.
She said, "So I want to pay for my food." I said, "No." And so anyway, I would not let her pay for her food. Well, the next day she came back and she donated like $40 or something to the thing. Nice. But it cracked me up. So
I love the last responder.
The last responder.
Oh, golly, that is great. So once COVID restrictions loosened and you could have people back dining in with you and stuff, and you got back into running your restaurant. So thinking about the restaurant that you procured in late 2019, and here we are, 2.5 years later almost, right? 3.5 years later almost, sorry. Does it look much like it did then in terms of food, drink, and decor, or have you massaged the menu quite a bit during your time there or not?
Yeah, we definitely, after we were coming strongly out of COVID and we knew things were kind of heading in the right direction, we didn't turn the menu upside down, but we made several changes from the original menu that I took when we bought it. We added some fresh fish options and put the oysters Banville on the menu. We were
you brought some
Cajun things back, and we'll run the Boston casserole as a special. We used the Play-Doh jars. It's kind of a funny story about Cajuns, and not all because we closed a day early, but we ended up we were supposed to get 2 pallets of Play-Doh jars, and we ended up with 22 pallets, some clerical mistake, and so we ended up with a ton of these extra Play-Doh jars. So for the first couple of years that we had Copper Grill, we were selling the Play-Doh in the Play-Doh jars.
Take it.
Yeah, and so we were rolling those jars out and pouring the drink like we did and letting people take the jar until we ran out of the Play-Doh jars. But yeah, we definitely made some changes with the menu, and it's been fun. I'll tell you the interesting thing, just kind of going backwards about the transition, is the fact that a lot of people knew that there was a connection with Cajuns and Copper Grill. And, so when I was down there consulting before we actually bought it, you could see there was an uptick in business. And again, we closed in the spring. And so Cajuns, you have to think about, between the bar and the dining area, you're talking a couple thousand people a night on a Friday, Saturday, especially in the spring when everybody's getting out, that all of a sudden you take that out of the picture, and not just Copper Grill, but every other restaurant in downtown, midtown, Heights, Hillcrest, they're looking for some place to go. When you take an institution like Cajun's out of the mix that can hold that many people,
sure,
they're going to want to go someplace. So that injected a lot of business into Copper Grill. And then what we did, though, is we had a great team of people existing, and then people that came from Cajun's, people that have worked with me for 20 years. I mean, you don't hear that a lot. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2. I'm talking about half dozen plus of, just these stellar servers, bartenders, people that care, people that, they know I care. And it's about the big picture at the end of the day. And so we brought this extra crew of people in, and it just made a marked change, and it's stayed strong. Business
and the good thing continued to grow. You all knew each other, and you knew you could trust them. They knew they could trust you. And again, you can't go wrong with throwing back out some of those fabulous Cajun's dishes and piquing people's memories, like Jim Keaton, those guys have done with some of the Jock and Suzanne things.
Saw that.
Mark Abernathy's rolled out some Blue Mesa stuff. I mean, these were, again, if you're not an inside Little Rock, Arkansas restaurant guy, you don't even know what we're talking about. But we're talking about, again, those who have carried on the traditions of closed restaurants with some of the dishes that made people happy back then. And I will tell you that Copper Grill, I have been to lunch there, I don't know, a couple dozen times, and man, you see a lot of folks in there. There's a lot of business folks. There's a lot of politicians in there. It's really kind of a fun see and be seen kind of place. I'm sure you've noticed that. Yeah,
it is interesting. Especially, I'm not one to be blown away by anybody in a high seat in life. I mean, we're all people at the end of the day, but it is pretty cool when you walk in, and I sometimes jokingly call it the House of Mayors, because you could walk in any day and you'll have our current mayor, the former mayor, the former, and the former mayor. Any day you could walk in and they'll all be there. And it's like a mini conference of the mayors of Little Rock for the past 30 years, which, I mean,
I've run into a governor or two.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not too long ago, I had my family, they came down to visit back in November, and we sit down for lunch, and the governor's sitting at the table right next to us. And, it's cool. It's cool. It speaks volumes to, just what we do. Good team, good, consistent, food products, and it's just, it's what it's all about.
Well, people know what they're going to get. So, okay, so there you are. You're dug full in with capers. You're making some changes. You're doing cool stuff. And then, how did Mary Beth say, well, you've done so well, and you've really liked owning Copper Grill? How about capers? Or what happened on that?
It was something similar to that. There was some conversation that went back and forth. It actually started, not long after we bought Copper Grill.
Which was 19, and you ended up getting in 21. Of course, we had the COVID period in between. Yeah. So in terms of actual business, open for full-blown business, it really wasn't very long afterwards.
No. So, we initially started talking about it maybe about, exact timeline is
all right.
Not on, but anyway, she was talking about selling it. COVID kicked in. Obviously, nobody's going to buy a restaurant in COVID, so that hit the back burner. So as we were coming out of COVID, is when she kind of started talking about possibly selling capers. And there was a restaurant group that she had talked to that was not from Arkansas. They're from my neck of the woods in the Northeast, and it just didn't sit right with me. Because even though I spent most of my time at Cajun's, I would go help at capers sometimes occasionally, and way back in the day when we had that one teeny little parking lot, we used to we used to shuttle folks from a grocery store parking lot back and forth. Wow. And that was sometimes one of my Saturday night gigs. Is I knew
how to live.
Yeah, I would go help shuttle because we had that one small parking lot that could hold about 20 people, and people would call on their cell phones. Hey, we're over at the Harvest Foods parking lot. Can you come? And so we had a minivan, and we picked people up back and forth all night to make that work.
Right there, Dan.
But anyway, so going back, when she started talking about this particular group and selling, to them, I thought, what do these guys know about Little Rock, Arkansas, number one, but capers?
Sure.
It's an institution of restaurants that were first on the scene out in far west Little Rock, like you mentioned earlier. You know, when she first opened that, there was nothing out there, and so
now you're in the shadow of Buffalo Wild.
Yeah, exactly. So just lots of competition, but we're still holding strong, and we still have an incredible team of people. James Willis, who is a partner in the restaurants, he's still with us, and have an incredible team of people out there that have been with the company for 16, 18 years or more. And so, just very fortunate to be where we're at and still, running strong.
Sure. Have you done much changing there? I mean, has there always been lunch at Capers? Or, I know I've had lunch there recently.
Yep.
There always been lunch?
Yep, we've always done lunch. Okay. We were slow to reopen to lunch just because we were going through the pains everybody was. You staffing, and then not only that, but unfortunately, our staff were out of the lunch picture for so long. Even some of the folks that were with us were giving us a little bit of pushback about getting back open for lunch, just because they got used to not being open for lunch and having it a little bit easier. And so it just took a little while to get everybody's head back in the game and to find staff, and we finally did. So yeah, it's always been open for lunch. We do lunch from 11 till 2, and then we reopen for dinner at 5. But yeah, we're back full strong with our lunch.
So besides the three, and including Cajuns in that conversation, serving excellent, creative, from-scratch food, there always been a focus on wine. There's really good wine lists. And one of the times I was at Capers, at least at one point in time, it may have been Monday night when there were half-price bottles of wine. And the law in Little Rock, Arkansas is that if I come in and get a bottle of wine, then I don't finish it, then you can cork it and I can take it. And people were coming in and they were corking it and putting it back in without having a sip, because it was a better deal and easier for them to buy a bottle of wine at Capers than it was to go to a liquor store around it. But wine's always, and you, I've been at tastings where you've led wine tastings, so clearly wine's something more than just something you like to consume. You've got some knowledge about it, and obviously I'm sure you're the one talking to the wine reps about what you're going to be serving and stocking at your two restaurants. Do you try to keep those distinct, or do you kind of get a little bit of synergies out of, hey, I get a better deal on 3 cases and I can split them up? Or how do you manage your wine program?
Well, how it is in Arkansas, we can't buy for both restaurants. I can't buy from Copper Grill and pass that. Yeah, so we can't do that. But I definitely, I love variety. To me, that's what wine is about, is the fun aspect of having different varieties and different price points. Not everything's got to be $150 to be delicious. Right. And so the wine programs are definitely a little bit different for downtown and West Little Rock. Downtown, we have a lot of happy hour people. We've got business people. There's some folks who don't care about the $5 happy hour wine. They want the nice $15 whatever it might be at the time. So we've got a floor to ceiling chalkboard that we run all kinds of wine features on to keep it interesting at Copper Grill. And then out at Capers, a little bit different. Like you mentioned, the half off. We definitely have a following of people who love. Why not? If you can save a few bucks, and that keeps people coming in the door. Some people will do what you said, where they'll come in, grab a bottle of wine, and run. Most people, they come in for the experience. They come in because they know they're going to get a nice bottle of wine and have a great meal, and not be out of pocket, and feel like they just had to mortgage that dinner.
Sure.
So and that's I think what we've always done a good job with is the quality, the quantity, and the price.
Right. And again, I know Little Rock well, and I've made that trip a lot. But I just looked on MapQuest, and depending on the route you take, it's between 11 and 15 miles between your restaurants, and each is about a normal traffic, about a 20-minute drive. So you don't really compete with yourself. I guess there's some benefit to that, in that I know that you have people that go to both, but you're also not right next door to one another.
Absolutely. We're definitely not cannibalizing the business at all. They're two different things. You've been to Copper Grill. Copper Grill has that downtown kind of urban, casual but upscale feel to it. And then Capers, it's in a 65, 70-year-old house, and it's got a fireplace in it, and it always reminds me, if anybody who's listening has been to Mustards in Napa Valley, it always reminded me of Mustards.
Yeah,
it's cute. It's got the glass front. You could see everybody in there in the evening when the lights are on and the sun's gone down. It just has such a cool feel to it. It's romantic, but it's still casual and approachable at the same time.
It's wine country feeling unto itself, for sure.
For sure.
And you also have a market, right?
Yeah.
In an adjacent building. Tell folks about kind of what niche that fills and what sort of things you sell there.
It's really a great market. We run daily specials that go out Monday through Friday. We have a list.
Like a grab and go.
Yeah, grab and go. You could actually order ahead. We send out we do an email, and we do Facebook posts that have what the daily specials are for the week. So you can call and order ahead for whatever days and whatever meals you want, how many you want, and they're made that day to grab at 3 o'clock. They're ready to go at that point, and we do a lot of business with it. There's a lot of people who, and it makes sense. A lot of people who have the mindset of, by the time I go to the grocery store and I buy $150 worth of things, get it all cooked, get it all put together, then I've got to clean the mess. Well, these are from scratch, fresh, made that day, and you have no cleanup. You've got no prep, and you're saving yourself a ton of money because you're not overbuying, and you have exactly what you need, and they're all reasonably priced. And then we also have our displays with soups and casseroles. They're made from scratch, but we freeze them, and so we've got a huge variety of soups and casseroles that you can keep in your freezer. We do our confetti dip. We do lemon pepper pita chips with the confetti dip. We have several dips that we keep in the fridge that are fresh. They're not frozen. Our pimento cheese, again, as you mentioned, everything's made from scratch. We even sell wine by the bottle in the market, so you can get your meals to go, grab a bottle of wine, get your casseroles for the weekend. So there's all kinds of stuff, and we have all kinds of other snacky type items. Different things from Stonewall Kitchens to Wicked products and whatnot. Just all the little fun things if you're going to a party and you need to grab some confetti dip and pita chips or French onion dip and whatnot. We have all those types of things.
Well, I'll tell you too that you're on Highway 10, Cantrell Road, a major east-west thoroughfare in Little Rock, Arkansas. And when people are leaving and heading home, you're on the right side of the street, literally the correct side and the right side. Pop in, grab something, take it home, you're good to go. Cool. Yeah. Well, that's a great addition to the whole portfolio. So listen, thanks, Dan, for being the guest today on Heaping Spoonful. Best of luck in all you're doing at Copper Grill and Capers. And thanks also to all of you who are listening to Heaping Spoonful today. Remember, we post new episodes the first and the third Tuesdays of each month. So please check out some of the ones you may have missed and keep an eye and ear out for new ones. Goodbye, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Heaping Spoonful. On behalf of all of us at Benny Keith Foods, Mid-South Division, please know how much we love connecting you with the legends of the culinary scene and their unique stories. I look forward to the next time we can offer you another Heaping Spoonful.